The Capitol hearing room was unusually tense. Senator John Kennedy sat quietly reviewing notes as Representative Adam Schiff prepared to speak. The air crackled with anticipation. Viewers tuned in expecting a policy debate, but what unfolded was far more personal and shocking. Schiff, known for his sharp tongue, looked up from his statement and locked eyes with Kennedy. "I've seen many things in this chamber," Schiff began, voice steady, "but never someone who cloaks aggression and charm quite like Senator Kennedy." Murmurs rippled through the room. Kennedy tilted his head slightly, brow raised. Then Schiff added, "Frankly, sir, your tactics remind me more of a thug than a statesman." Gasps echoed. The word thug hit the room like a slap. Kennedy didn't flinch. He set down his pen and folded his hands slowly, letting the silence hang. Schiff shifted uncomfortably, perhaps expecting an outburst. Instead, Kennedy leaned forward with a calm, almost amused tone. "You got a thesaurus full of insults, Adam, but sadly, not much truth." His southern drawl softened the jab, but the steel beneath was unmistakable. "I'm from Louisiana," Kennedy continued, "where we value straight talk over slander." Schiff attempted to interrupt, but Kennedy raised one finger. "You had your say. Now let me have mine." The room stilled. "You don't like how I vote? Fine. You don't like how I speak? Tough. But don't mistake conviction for criminality." The room erupted in murmurs again. Schiff tried to regroup. "Your rhetoric inflames division," he said. Kennedy stood. What inflames division is calling colleagues thugs on national television? He turned toward the press seated in the back. "You want to talk about decorum? Start by checking your own tone." Schiff looked rattled now. This wasn't the reaction he'd anticipated. Kennedy walked closer to the podium. "You don't intimidate me, Adam. You don't shame me either. But you just embarrassed yourself." Schiff's mouth tightened. "You're twisting my point," he said. Kennedy chuckled. "You mean the part where you accused a sitting senator of being a thug? Pretty hard to twist that, son." The audience laughed nervously. Schiff's cheeks flushed. "It's about behavior, not identity," he said. Kennedy nodded. "Good. Then let's talk behavior. I come here prepared. I debate respectfully. I call you sir even when I think you're wrong. What you did today wasn't principled. It was petty." The crowd began to murmur again. Cameras zoomed in. This was turning into must-see television. Kennedy stepped back, but didn't sit down. "This body's lost enough trust from the American people without us insulting each other like playground bullies." Schiff sat stiffly. "You're deflecting from your actions," he mumbled. Kennedy replied, "And you're projecting your fears. I don't bark unless I'm provoked. And today, you poked the wrong dog." The tension was thick enough to cut. Kennedy looked across the aisle, locking eyes with colleagues who tried to hide their smirks. "Some people think if you raise your voice, you've won. I believe if you raise the level of conversation, we all win." Reporters scribbled wildly. This wasn't just politics, it was theater, and Kennedy was commanding the stage. One reporter whispered, "He's turning it around completely." Schiff, clearly off balance, fumbled with his papers. "Let the record show," he said, "that I did not mean thug in a literal sense." Kennedy raised an eyebrow. "Let the record also show that calling someone something you can't defend is a coward's move." Gasps. Schiff went silent. Kennedy turned to the committee chair. "Mr. Chairman, I'd like my colleague's comments struck from the record." The chairman hesitated. Schiff spoke up. "I withdraw the remark." Kennedy smiled. "Good. Now we can proceed like adults." The hearing resumed, but the atmosphere had shifted. Kennedy had not only diffused the insult, he'd reversed the embarrassment. After the hearing, reporters swarmed Kennedy. "Do you think Schiff owes you a public apology?" one asked. Kennedy responded coolly, "I think his silence just now said everything we needed to hear." Social media exploded. Clips of the exchange went viral. Kennedy clapback trended within minutes, with millions watching the senator's calm dismantling of the insult. Late-night shows aired the footage. "Never bring a whisper to a Southern fight," one joked. Even political opponents praised Kennedy's poise. One commentator tweeted, "You don't have to agree with John Kennedy to admit he taught a masterclass in restraint today." Schiff, on the other hand, remained unusually quiet in the hours that followed. Privately, insiders claimed Schiff regretted his choice of words. "He was trying to provoke a reaction," said one aide, but Kennedy didn't take the bait. He flipped the script. Meanwhile, Kennedy returned to his office like nothing happened, declining interviews. "Let folks draw their own conclusions," he told staff. "The tape speaks for itself." That evening, Kennedy released a short statement. "I don't come to Washington to win popularity contests. I come to speak for the people of Louisiana. Respectfully, but firmly." The quote circulated widely. It resonated with voters tired of performative politics. Kennedy's calm, sharp response struck a nerve, especially in contrast to Schiff's emotionally charged approach. The next morning, major newspapers covered the exchange. Headlines read, "Kennedy deflects insult with Southern grace," and "Schiff backpedals after verbal jab." Analysts debated the long-term effects. Some believed Schiff's credibility took a hit. Others said it was just a bad day. But no one denied the impression Kennedy left: controlled, composed, and clear. Cable networks replayed the moment repeatedly. Experts broke down every word. "Kennedy showed that you don't need volume to make a point," one said. "You need clarity and confidence." Schiff's office declined requests for comment. The silence was telling. Behind closed doors, damage control meetings were underway. But the internet never forgets. Kennedy, meanwhile, went back to legislative work. No tweet storms, no interviews, just a quiet return to business. That silence only added to his image. Commentators noted how restraint had become his strength. "It's the calm ones you should watch," someone tweeted, "because when they speak, people listen." A week later, Schiff addressed the incident at a town hall. "I used the wrong word," he admitted. "It wasn't appropriate." But the apology came too late for many. The moment had passed, and the narrative was already written. Kennedy had come out the unexpected victor, not through outrage, but through composure. Memes flooded social media. One showed Kennedy in sunglasses with the caption, "Thug life? Nah, just Southern truth." Another showed Schiff looking flustered with, "When you try to clap back and get clapped instead." The internet had chosen its winner. Kennedy's office, however, didn't respond. They stayed above the noise, just like their boss. Commentators across the spectrum highlighted Kennedy's strategy. "It's not just what he said," one analyst noted. "It's how he said it. He disarmed the moment without escalating it." Viewers appreciated the shift. In a world used to shouting matches, Kennedy's calm dismantling of Schiff's insult felt refreshing, almost presidential in tone. Back on Capitol Hill, Kennedy remained unfazed. "I didn't come here to trade insults," he told a colleague, "but I won't stand quietly when someone crosses a line." His words echoed in the halls. Even senators from opposing parties acknowledged his restraint. "We can disagree without degradation," one tweeted, indirectly referencing the incident. Schiff's team, recognizing the fallout, attempted damage control. "It was a heat-of-the-moment comment," said one spokesperson. But voters weren't interested in excuses. They had seen the footage. They had felt the moment. And many respected Kennedy for rising above it rather than dragging it down into chaos. News anchors replayed Kennedy's quote again and again. "Don't mistake conviction for criminality." It became a viral phrase. Pundits praised its weight. It was more than a rebuttal. It was a challenge to every politician who let partisanship poison civility. Kennedy had not just responded. He had redefined the tone of the room. Kennedy returned to his committee duties the next day as if nothing happened. But something had changed. Staffers whispered that senators who once dismissed him were now listening more carefully. "He speaks softly, but people are hearing him louder than ever," one staffer said. Respect is often earned in quiet moments, and Kennedy had just earned plenty. In interviews, political experts said the clash was a lesson in emotional discipline. He didn't retaliate, he educated, and he exposed Schiff's lapse without gloating, one observed. That kind of leadership, they noted, resonated beyond party lines. It wasn't just Republicans praising Kennedy, it was centrists and even some Democrats. Polls showed a spike in Kennedy's approval rating, not because of any new policy, but because of how he handled pressure. Americans saw a man who didn't lose control, even when insulted on live TV. "That's the kind of composure we need more of," a caller said on a morning radio show. The sentiment was spreading fast. Kennedy himself said little. "I've moved on," he told reporters. "Washington has bigger problems than name-calling." But even in his dismissal, there was a deeper message. He had turned an attempted insult into a moment of national reflection. Civility, it seemed, still had a place. Even in politics weeks later, during another hearing, Schiff kept his tone measured and respectful when addressing Kennedy. The tension was gone. A quiet understanding had taken its place. Kennedy nodded slightly, but didn't mention the past. He didn't need to. Everyone remembered. The message had been received, loud and clear, and so, what began as a careless insult ended as a masterclass in restraint. John Kennedy didn't shout. He didn't storm out. He stood his ground with words that struck deeper than anger ever could. Schiff may have lit the match, but Kennedy's calm response extinguished the fire and left a legacy of dignity in its place.